Serious, Redditors who like to walk at night, what's the creepiest thing you've ever experienced? A guy walking down the road, wearing a wetsuit, no shoes, he had goggles on, and he was watching something on his phone. There is no water nearby he could have been swimming in. It was about 2 AM. It was your local vigilante. I was once walking in the park really late at night and some drunk guy ended up trying to chase me around while crab walking. It scared me at the time, but now looking back at it I just think it was super weird. Just a drunk person who decided to mess with you and probably got a solid laugh out of it. I was followed by a white van twice. I was heading to my friend's house when I noticed a white van that was driving behind me slowly. I thought it was odd, so when I turned the corner I sprinted to the main road. A week later in the same spot that white van started following me again before parking, and a dude got out and started following me laughing and shaking his keys. I turned the same corner and sprinted to the main road. That was the last time I went that route. I cannot confirm whether it was the same white van, but 2 years before I was skateboarding around that area with my friend when a van tried to run us over. Pretty fricked. Reminds me of when I worked graveyards. The same van stopped and asked me if I wanted a ride. This happened like 4 or 5 times spread out between weeks. I got followed by several possums once. I know, it sounds lame, but when you end up going about a half mile and every time you look back there's these beady little reflecting eyes staring at you, and you can see them freeze, it makes your skin crawl. Okinawa here, we have giant Japanese bats that'll follow you. At first it was absolutely terrifying, but when you realize they mean no harm they actually super adorable. They can have 5 feet wingspans. AWW. Confused feelings. I was already creeped out from reading a Reddit thread of creepy stories when I decided to walk to my car and go get some tacos. I had to park a few blocks away from my place. I thought I was just creeped out from the stories, but I had a bad feeling, and out of nowhere I felt I needed to run into a stranger's yard. Sure enough, a car had been following me, and the driver rolled down the window to tell. Vulnerable young women shouldn't be walking alone at night. There's scary people out here. At this point I'm at the front door area of this random house just screaming at him to frick off, and he drove away. That car snuck up so easily, so I'm glad I had a feeling about it. A few years back, I was stoned and walking back from a friend's house. Suddenly, I saw all these lights floating up through a heavily wooded area. I nearly crapped my pants, thinking it was an alien invasion or something. I called my buddy in a panic, describing the lights, and he burst out laughing. My stupid butt had never seen or heard of Chinese lanterns. A few years ago I was staying in Chicago with my cousin while playing in a poker tournament in Hammond, Indiana. I made a pretty deep run in the event I was playing in and play didn't stop until midnight. I took the bus from the casino back into the city, which dropped me off in Chinatown. I had to take a couple bus transfers to get back to my cousin's apartment. Between tiredness, adrenaline rush of the poker tournament, and not being familiar with the city, I got a bit lost and ended up being 10 blocks from where I should have been. I pulled out my phone and realized my mistake and decided to walk the rest of the way. That is when an attractive 20-something-year-old female passes me at an intersection. Looking a bit nervous, with 2 drunk guys in tow catcalling, I loudly said, "Hey," first female name I could think of, "do you know these guys?" while briskly catching up to the girl. The guys immediately broke off and I quietly said, "I noticed these 2 guys following you. Just making sure you're okay." Her voice was trembling while she said thank you. Turns out she also is not from the city, got separated from her friends, and her phone was dead. These 2 weirdos had been following her for a while. I walked with her for a few blocks and we ducked into a diner. I let her use my phone to get a hold of one of her friends. Poor girl was dang near in tears. Her friends finally came and that was the end of it. But dang, I have never seen someone be so blatantly stalked, preyed upon. You're smart to call her by her name, and kind to rescue her, and brave to get involved. Thank you for what you did. More scary than creepy. When I was about 14 I was walking home from some friends around midnight, so it was completely dark. I had turned down rides home because I like to walk at night. As I'm walking down a small street I see about 10 boys coming out from this one house. I'd assume they were 18+ years. I'm like, nope, and turn around pretending to have walked the wrong way. hoping they won't notice me. They had. One of them start shouting for me. "Hey, why you turning? Come back." I can hear the others giggle a little. I ignore it and keep walking. Out of nowhere they all start sprinting after me. "Now we're gonna freaking get you." I obviously start sprinting as well. "We're gonna freaking get you." They chased me for some blocks until they just got exhausted from running and just gave up. But I didn't stop. I ran all the way home. At the time I was pretty fit from training martial arts. I don't even wanna know what would have happened if I was in bad shape and they caught me. Most of the time I just try to subtly cross the street, because if you make it obvious you're trying to avoid groups of men, they'll make it obvious they noticed. Sucks having to think that way though. Went to smoke at a local park because I couldn't sleep. I went and sat down at a circular bench with a wall behind me. I noticed some old dude walking a small dog sort of circling around me, taking different paths all the time but then somehow coming back to the same point. Then some other old dude sat down a few meters from me and started asking what I was doing and what the time was. As soon as that happened I saw the other dude standing at that point again and I got the chills and booked it. Told him what time it was and straight up left. Later heard it is sometimes used as a cruising zone. Well, I was at a train station around 10:30 PM and some guys were hanging out on the platform by the parking lot while I was in the middle between the tracks. They kept looking at me and I just got this vibe. You know, I was maybe 19 at the time. They were clearly in their 20s at least. I called my mom to pick me up. I was planning to walk home, and when she arrived I had to go down the stairs, through the tunnel under the tracks, back up the stairs, then past these guys. One of them started following me into the parking lot but stopped when he realized I was going towards a car. Overall just creepy as heck. I'm female, and I was traveling in Germany with my mom, visiting my Oma. I like to watch trains and Germany has a lot of them, so that's why I was at a train station. I wasn't supposed to be out that late but one of the high speed ones was coming by, so I decided to stay out longer than I should have. I'm honestly not sure what I would have done if I hadn't been able to call my mom to pick me up. My family doesn't like to make the dogs hold it more than 8 or 9 hours overnight, so we usually walk them around midnight. Where we live, that's reasonably safe. We're in a small town. Everybody knows everybody else and their grandmother. The only person nobody knew was this kind of awkward middle-aged guy who'd randomly jog through town sometimes. But there's a bike trail by the school. Lots of people from neighboring towns go there. That's normal. Sometimes, when I was walking my dog, I'd see that jogger, only he'd donned a wig and put on women's clothing. Not normal women's clothing, though. This was old lady clothing. Specifically, an old lady dress that looked frighteningly similar to what Norma Bates wears in Psycho. It got creepier as time went on, because he always wore the same Norma Bates dress on his midnight jogs. So it started to seem like the midnight runs were less about gender expression or experimenting with feminine clothing, and more about waiting until midnight to run through town in a creepy old lady dress. He'd heavily mouth breath on the midnight jogs and do this awkward shuffle run. He didn't do that during the day, and he wouldn't acknowledge anybody during his jogs, except my mother, who he would greet unprompted with a gruff hello during the day. I haven't seen the guy in a while. Can't say I miss being startled on walks by him suddenly coming around a corner. I am a night walker. I walk every night until 3 AM. I've seen a man clearly on drugs putting on a full concert with an air guitar and drums and humping dumpsters in an alley. I've seen a man all dressed in black crouching sneaking around the neighborhood while flying a drone at 2 AM. Not creepy, but a bobcat. I live in the woods and I was terrified. He was big as frick, about the size of a 40-50 lb dog but lean and strong like a cat. He was a tiny lion. He was a bobcat. It's hard to imagine unless you've seen one in person. He didn't bother me though. I stopped in my tracks, kind of hunched down and lowered my stance. He stared me down for a while then went on his way. Was visiting a relative in Colorado, sleeping on an air mattress in living room, when around 2 AM I hear a noise and look out the glass sliding door to see mountain lion standing on the patio looking in. Near crap myself staring back at it until it left after a bit. I used to be an unemployed M addict. I would be awake for days at a time, and usually only come out of my room at night. Honestly, I'd be the creepy person someone else would spot, doing things that were actually pretty normal and explainable, except that I'd never get the chance to explain it. Yes, I was alternating between crawling around the yard and staring up at the sky, and sometimes just standing completely still, wearing only a towel. You see, I was looking for a joint that the wind had blown off the balcony cause I wanted to blaze before I showered, but I was also stargazing and also I was hallucinating. Glad you shared this. Eased a bit of my anxiety with some of the stories on here. Also congrats on recovery. M is a heck of a drug. Walking the dog before sunrise. A guy comes running up asking if I had seen a naked blood-covered woman, as it was his mentally ill daughter who had escaped. Hadn't seen her. Kept walking the dog. The sound of a woman or child screaming bloody murder deep in the woods on a pitch black night. No flashlight could penetrate the dense brush. The screams came periodically over several minutes and seemed to move in the distant woods. This is a very secluded area with no houses around for a mile or so, and I was alone. I was sweating bullets and my hands were shaking as I tried to see through the trees. I could hear rustling as something moved out there. At that point I just bolted out of there all the way home, never looking back. Turned out to be a fox eating rabbits. Rabbits and foxes can both have a very eerie and human-like scream. Okay, this is my time to shine, fellas. So I go for a walk most nights around 10 PM for around an hour. On Friday nights I'll bring a few cool brewskis, walk for maybe 2 or 3 hours towards town. To set the scene for ya, it was about 12 AM, and there's a park that's its own little island in the lake in the middle of town. The only way in and out is a long, skinny, man-made land bridge. I was walking around there, and on the way back I saw a car at the other end of the bridge. Okay, no biggie. I keep walking and the car takes off, but there's a green blue blinking LED where it was. That's cool. I keep walking. It's about 150 feet away at this point. The light stays where it is and I keep going towards it, shining my phone in its direction, coughing, dragging my feet, etc. so I don't startle the mysterious light thing. As I get closer, about 40 feet, I hear movement and rustling sounds. At around 20 feet I see it's a man hunched over in the middle of the street over one of those shiny thermal blankets. On the blanket there was a small dead animal, and it looked like was getting ready to skin it. I get about 10 feet away, as far as I can while still getting past, and he shoots straight up and in a super panicked voice, he said, "Oh crap, hey buddy, we were just driving and there was this fox." And I just said something like yeah okay, and kept going. Didn't see him anymore, but about 10 minutes later a cop pulled over beside me and asks if I'd seen a suspicious man and gave me a description. I told him I didn't get a good look at him, but I told him about the guy with the fox. He said that sounds pretty sketchy and went to go check it out. I don't go to that park anymore. That was most probably due to legally hunting and wanting to keep the fur. It's not that unusual, unfortunately. I was a teenager, living in a small town. I was with a friend. It was about 2 AM. We were facing a hill up ahead. I saw something moving toward the top. It appeared to be coming toward us, on the sidewalk. As it got closer it became illuminated by a dim street light. From a distance, it appeared to be very tall, around 7 feet if I had to guess. I couldn't see its feet. The way it was walking was more like a gliding, swaying motion. Slow, but it felt like it was faster than was comfortable at the same time. The weird part was that I couldn't see any features. It looked AA though it was white, the way the street lamp hit it, but like white robes. Imagine a 7-foot tall, thin thing, dressed in a full burqa. I don't know how else to describe it. It looked like robes, the way the fabric swayed, and I could not see a face. I couldn't even see clearly defined arms or legs. It was just swaying and gliding down the hill on the sidewalk, with no one else around. My friend and I exchanged some WTF between us and turned off the road very quickly toward my house. To this day I have no clue what it was. I am sure the explanation is very asinine, but I'll never forget it, and the feeling of dread that washed over me seeing it. Well, this has been fun, but if you'll all excuse me, I have some very important nightmares to attend to. I was walking at night in San Francisco with another girl. We called a taxi because hailing one is absurdly difficult there, and I think people know that because a black and marked car pulled up as we were sitting on the sidewalk. The driver rolled down his window and was wearing sunglasses. He asked if we needed a taxi. We told him we had called one and he pushed for us to ride with him instead. Pass. Got mauled by some dogs. I live in a rural area with lots of bushland. I don't usually go walking at night, but I'd had a fight with my partner and didn't think I took the route I normally took my dogs on. It has a bunch of dodgy units and then a stretch of bush for about a kilometer before it meets civilization. That night I saw a medium-sized dog following me, so I kept an eye on it until I got to the bushland. I lost track of it and figured it got bored. I don't even remember being attacked. I remember an older couple throwing rocks at the dogs until they ran and I went to hospital. Turned out it wasn't an isolated incident. A few more people and pets got attacked over the next few weeks. Lots of crappy people and lots of unfed, undesexed dogs creates a big expensive problem. Like 5,000 dogs got euthanized that year to try deal with the problem. This was in a lower middle class, reserve not park. Walking past an entry and noticed an average guy just standing somewhat under a tree. 10 PM at night. Not on the phone, not having a cigarette, not in the usual normal spots, just standing there in the darkness under this tree. I used to work nights. I got used to going to work after dark, and other than looking over your shoulders and avoiding dark areas, the only time I was truly terrified is when I heard a wolf howling in the woods in front of my building. The distance was literally across the street. We had a problem with wild animals back in the area I was living in, but this was the first time something this scary was close. This was no dog or fox. I walked quickly to work praying hard that it was not following me, and when I was at the lights down the road, I seen a police car in the area where the wolf was. I guess someone heard it too and called emergency. The other time I was scared was I was living in a haunted house. There was something evil in that house. You get the sense of deep fear inside you, and my pets were always either growling or hiding somewhere shaking with fear. After we moved out, housing was hard to get in the town. There was 3 families that moved in and out in a span of less than a year. That area was sought after by tenants, but no one stayed in that house for very long. I had to walk home 4 miles on pitch black super rural northern Michigan dirt back roads, and 2 coyotes crossed the road, like silent ghosts, right in front of me, so I got a little nervous. I could always hear packs of them screaming together in the woods outside my bedroom window. I loved listening to them, but I knew when they got together there were a lot of them, so I did start feeling kinda sketchy. This was before we all had cell phones, and shortly after that I hear this sudden heavy ass crunching and crashing coming at me in the woods, across the road, like 10 feet away. I blindly grab a big stick and just wait for the attack. It was somebody's cow. She saw a human in the dark and she got excited. She walked with me for most of my way home before she eventually realized something wasn't right, or maybe that I didn't have food, and she turned back around. But I wasn't scared at all walking in the dark with that big lady thumping around next to me. That is so freaking adorable. Socialized cows are just like big dogs. You've encountered the lost treasure of Captain Gus Fishhead. Subscribe to receive some of his gold. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.